Hi, this is Shaun. Welcome to Particles in Dynamics, simulating natural phenomenon. In this class, we're going to talk about an introduction to particle systems and how to create them, and pretty much we're going to focus on the emitter tab in the particle systems. So let's get started. Where can you create particles? Well, if you hit F5 on your keyboard, you can jump to the Dynamics tab, and that'll take you to the old particles and dynamics system attributes. But as of like 2008, Maya added the nucleus node, which added a more efficient way of generating particles, and it also allows the dynamic systems in the nucleus node that are all attached to talk to each other. So that includes cloth and hair are also, and fluids. They're all sort of combined in under the nucleus node, and also like rigid body dynamics. So it's a great thing. And in addition, the particle systems that are available in the nucleus node have all the attributes of the old particle systems, but they've added like quite a few new abilities. So it just makes sense to sort of start out and with the new tools. So let's get started. And how do we create some particles? There's a NParticle tool. If we open that up to the submenu, you can see there's the ability to create a grid of particles. So I'm going to hold down the X key and snap to grid. Created a grid of particles there. We could also sketch particles. And if I'm done, I'll hit enter, and then W to turn on the transform tool. And you can see that the particles, all the particles I just created, I'm moving around. It has a collective transform node. So the particles are pretty much just considered points in space with a collective transform node. And they're different than regular Maya objects in that they don't really have that. For each point, there's not a shape node. It's just for the whole particle shape object. Let's create some more particles. Quite often what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a particle emitter. And so there's an emitter. Let's create one. Usually by default, the first that comes up is a volume emitter. And you can see it emits particles from inside this volume, and then they start to react to whatever forces are in the world. By default, the new nucleus system has some forces applied. It has gravity applied. So, and if we select those particles, you can see there's 4 tabs across the top here. There's a particle tab, which has some transform attributes. There's the shape tab, and we'll go through all of these attributes. There's the emitter tab, which is where we're going to pretty much get started today, and then we'll talk about the nucleus tab a little bit. So just at the top of the nucleus node, you can see there's some gravity attributes. If we turn that to 0 and we restart the simulation, you can see they're emitting in all directions and there's no gravity. And so I'm starting and stopping this simulation by hitting Alt-V, Alt-Shift-V to rewind. In addition, when you're running a particle simulation, you really want to play back every frame. If you do real time and you have a ton of particles, your playback may skip frames, which won't give you a proper feedback for what you're looking at. So you really want to make sure that you're playing every frame. And then we'll talk about particle caching in another video so that you can sort of lock in the attributes of where those particles are. And so it'll play consistently. You can even like rewind. Like right now, if I rewind, the particles don't go back home. All right. So let's talk more about the different types of emitters. I mean, in terms of volume emitters, there's different types of volumes that you could emit from. Again, we're in the emitter tab. Let's scroll down to the volume emitter attributes. There's a cube, there's a sphere, there's a cylinder, a cone, a torus. And so those particles spawn from inside that object, and you can specify even like a volume sweep. You can then you'd be emitting from inside that swept semi-torus that you've created. And you can also, there's other controls. What other emitters are there? There's an Omni Emitter, which emits particles in all directions from a single point in space. There's a surface emitter and a curve emitter. So if we had created a curve, let's delete those particles. Okay, we've created this curve. Now we're going to create NParticles. Now, if you want to create from a curve or an object, you do need to go to create emit from object. And so here's curve options, and I'm going to hit apply. And now let's hit play. And you can see we spawned a bunch of particles, and now we're emitting. All right, let's emit from an object. Got a polyplane. We could even add some edge loops. Okay. And let's create emit from object. And we'll say surface. And we hit apply. And now you can see the particles are emitting from all over that surface of that object. So that's very useful for a lot of particle simulations, emitting from a surface that you've defined, because the modeling tools in Maya are pretty nice. So let's just go back and create another emitter, a volume emitter. And let's just go back and look at the core attributes inside of the emitter tab here. So we've talked about, we've got the emitter type right here. And within that emitter type, we can specify more or less particles per second. You could even scale object by size or by speed. And if you have a large object and you scale by size, you'll just emit a ton more particles. You can also specify directionality of the particles. You could specify random speed. That's kind of a typical attribute. And then there's some particle color attributes, which are tied to the shape node. But for now, we're going to stay mostly in the emitter. So we've got these different particles that we've created. What other particle types are there? Well, I guess one thing that we can talk about in the shape node is that under the shading parameters, if you're creating particles, right now we've only been emitting points, but you can also, there's quite a few different types of point variations. There's a sphere type of a point, and there's multi-streak, which is kind of beautiful. And there's multi-point, which derives one point and then several points around it. And then there's other types of rendering. And now we're in the next video, I'm going to talk about software versus hardware particles. If it says SW, then it would need the standard Maya renderer to render. So that's under software. Whereas under, if I had points and I tried to render that, nothing. So we'll talk about rendering using a different rendering engine called the hardware rendering engine. It's very efficient and fast. This blobby surface is kind of fun. It's a software type of render, and we can actually have those particles glump together based on proximity. Literal or a lot. And there's an even better blobby surface attribute with the particle water, but we'll get into that more in the next video. But I think this is a good place to wrap up for now. We've pretty much gone over the basic emitter attributes, basic creation attributes, and then we've also sort of mentioned that beyond points, there's additional types of particles that can be created. The only one that we didn't talk about, which we'll also do in the next video, is how to fill an object. Pretty simple. All right, thanks so much for watching. We will wrap this up and we'll see you in the next video.